Welcome. I am your host, Reroll Zero, and for today, I don't know how long this stream is going to be, uh, or how difficult it is to talk about the subject, because well, it's like I feel like this one's trying to I'm trying to get blood out of a stone for this one, because not just it being uh difficult to difficult to sorry about that. I'm just getting my phone ready. But besides difficult to talk about, I think it's almost impossible, or not impossible, but um, difficult to say enough things about the project in question. So I wanted to say that before we go, or before we get ready. And with that said, I'm just going to just for right now get the formalities of the way. I want to have a Twitch shout out for one of my moderators, Shin the Legend. He helps me out a lot, uh, and I know he's on stream in a while, but if you have a chance to follow him, that'd be great. Another shout out is for Shrimpy RF. He it depends when he's in my stream, but at the very least, or I've been watching him, and I think he's pretty a fantastic streamer as well. So if you have a chance to watch him as well, then that'd be more power to him as well. So he's one of my best friends that I've saw recently, and I'm glad to I know it's impossible to hang out with people right now, but watching other people play video games is fine too. And the last thing is bring up the change.org position again. I don't like Overwatch, but if you help out this guy, that'd be great for me. Again, I'm not being paid for by him or anything, because again, if I was being paid for him, I would have to disclose that in the paid promotion. So other than that, that's all I got to say. Uh, Going ahead, let's get started. Our current subject today is Metal Gear Survive, which um, you think I might be getting desperate for subject matter or content, but no, I wanted to talk about this one actually a long while, and I think the image is over here. Because again, I think it's like when there's something like a spinoff like this, and it goes relatively super poorly. It it's just it's like, okay, well, who was this made for, and who uh who you know and why was it published, that sort of thing. I think this idea wasn't bad in the setup, the idea, but it wasn't, you know um it wasn't it wasn't constructed properly. It wasn't, set up properly. Unfortunately, it's kind of 50-50 Konami's fault, and then 25 25% slightly for Kojima. He's not here, but again, he probably had this idea in the works at least once, and then this came out the way it is. And then 25% from the player base, and B from the developers that are not from the Konami brand, but again, more like probably another team associated or assigned to it. So that's probably where most of the blame is. Again, the game's premise wasn't such a bad idea, in the sense that you get to make your own character, and that's a great idea, like Monster Hunter or Fantasy Star, or where they have the universe and they allow you to create a character in it. Um, Other than that, I think building the base aspect wasn't too bad. I think it would have been better if they focused on that a little bit more. The zombies, the zombies in the game are a bit dumb. I think it's funny that like I feel like they made the most Metal Gear story ever by focusing on one slight aspect. And again, spoilers if you haven't never um, played Metal Gear Survive or in general, uh, uh, gosh, what, um, but the story is as follows. You're like kind of a generic soldier at the uh, mother base slash gosh, what's it called? From like kind of like Peace Walker slash Phantom Pain or whatever, or the previous base, and you get sent through a warp hole or sent through a portal or whatever you want to call it, and it transports you to another dimension. And then you find out you're not the only survivor. There are recruitable soldiers, and the story kind of goes from there, where you're in the other dimension. Um, and then you find out at like, oh, spoiler alert, you're not in another dimension. You're in the future, kind of. And then they explain that the zombies are there because the nanomachines from previous installments, and a plot caveat that they sometimes use, but not so much so that it makes the games so annoying that if they focus on that the entire time, it would be annoying. Instead of the Metal Gear, you'd be focusing on nanomachines. So anyway, the nanomachines started becoming smarter, and they formed their own like um they kind of had this own like hive mind type of thing, and then they started corrupting their host or whatever, and then they became zombies. So even though the story is out there, it's kind of almost par for the course for Metal Gear of all things, because it's just uh thank you very much for hosting, Shin. I was scared for for the host for a second. Anyway, oops, I should have. Oh, never mind. I don't even know if it popped up in chat, so I'll put up chat again. Um, but anyway, it's a story that's out there, but for again, it's almost par for the course for Metal Gear, because so many of their stories are just out there, and it's just it's not unusual. It's probably it's funny enough. It's like almost um like if Kojima was there, he probably add something more about how, like, I don't know, Martians are involved, or this was a Foxhound virus, or something like that, something even more egregious and like ridiculous. But yeah, again, the Metal Gear Survive story was not as ridiculous. In fact, sometimes more ridiculous, like Metal Gear Solid 4 with the breakdance fighting of Raiden versus God, what's his name? I can't think of his name. The bisexual vampire guy. Um, he's in Metal Gear Solid 2. Vamp. There we go. Vamp. There he is. But the breakdance fight in Metal Gear Solid 4 is probably the most, if not the most ridiculous thing that's ever happened in the series of games. And, good or bad, I don't really care. I would just, just the premise itself is just really weird. Um, but pro the game, I know there's a lot of cons, and I don't want to focus on the cons um because again, there's numerous reviews that say, oh, the cons are, they make the game worse, they make the game unplayable, all that. But I don't want to focus on that. I want to focus on all the pros and positive aspects of the game. a great positive aspect. Same thing coming over from Peace Walker is multiplayer. Even though, in a sense, for Peace Walker, if multiplayer more or less ruined the stealth aspect of the game, I don't really care. It was awesome, and more Japanese games need to have consistent, co-op and multiplayer, like like a beat 'em up or other games like even though like Sonic and Mario, right? Those have been hit and miss with co-op over the years. If they had co-op consistently all the time, that would honestly make me want to play more. Kind of almost going. Sorry, another segue to Nintendo, but also if you talk about that with Smash Ultimate, I think with the Smash Ultimate, I forgot what it's called, World of Light. I think you can only play that one single player, but you can play the Spirit Mode um, board thing with two players, and I just don't think that makes sense. Why would you do that but not allow co-op for World of Light? I think they allowed co-op for uh, the Brawl, which allowed in the subspace emissary mode, and that was fantastic. So I wish it wasn't so hit and miss from a lot of Japanese companies. I wish they consistently have co-op, co-op, couch co-op, online co-op. Online co-op should be focused the main thing. Same thing with Streets Rage 4. Streets Rage 4 has 4-player couch co-op, but only, unfortunately, 2-player online co-op. So I don't know why they didn't push for 4 players on that. So, sorry, going back to Metal Gear Survive, co-op, online, is great. Again, when it's competitive, especially for kind of competitive multiplayer for a niche game like Metal Gear, um, I'd say it's okay because I know it's like they had competitive multiplayer in Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain. But again, that's it's iffy. It's not great. Um, I take it or leave it. I don't really care, but um, gosh, Metal Gear Survive, or Metal Gear Solid 5, competitive multiplayer. I think was again a misstep when it again with Peace Walker, when it's when you and your buddies are going up, or you and your friends are going up against a 5-ton machine or whatever. That's really great, and I know it's unfortunately only boss battles was allowed to have 4 players. Again, same thing, a problem with like Metal Gear Streets of Rage. Um, but again, it was still that idea. It was still that they were trying for it, yeah, I know it's like if you had 4 players on the sneaking missions or whatever, that would kind of be almost overkill. So anyway, but yeah, cooperative multiplayer is a great idea. Same thing for Mass Effect 3 multiplayer. I will do I'll do a future, I think, a podcast for that. But cooperative multiplayer is such always a great idea. I don't think there's ever a negative connotation to a cooperative multiplayer. Again, same thing with the Monster Hunter, even though, or citing a non-Japanese game, Diablo 4, or not Diablo 4, sorry, that's not even out yet. Diablo 3 or Diablo, or any Diablo for that matter, as you have more party members, the game has more of a difficulty tilt, and it doesn't do that. I would assume so in Metal Gear Survive, but it's still the good idea of cooperative multiplayer. Cooperative multiplayer should always be the focus. It should not be just like a one and done type situation, because again, like, sorry, going back to another Western thing is Metal Gear, or not Metal Gear, sorry, confusing my M's. Mass Effect 3 and Mass Effect Andromeda had multiplayer, and I swear I only played the multiplayer for Mass Effect 3 and Andromeda. I did not play the story modes because you're stuck as either Shepard or Ryder in the Andromeda, and in multiplayer you can be anybody that you want to be. So that kind of so again, same thing with Metal Gear Survive. Co-op or multiplayer, created character is such a great idea. Especially in a universe that's been around for like 25 plus years. Um, or Fantasy Star or Monster Hunter. Created character is such a great idea because they're okay with you creating your own character and exploring the universe at your own leisure or leisure. I don't know how you pronounce it. But yeah, creating character. I think it was funny because the game was about zombies, and I always get too scared about playing Resident Evil. I know I played the as people would put quote unquote the bad ones, uh, Resident Evil 5 and 6, and I know they're always going to be with connotations or finger quotes universally bad. Um, but I think it was funny that I created a character in Metal Gear Survive, and I kept on trying to find a beret and have just like kind of a blue shirt on, and I kept on thinking I looked like Jill, so it was funny. It was funny um because that was that's the fun part of creating a character and being part of their universe. Just yeah, again, like um it's a great idea, and again, um sometimes a lot of either create a character or allow your favorite characters from the series to be playable, because again, that just that always upsets me when there's a lot of storied franchises and they haven't allowed you, or they haven't had their that character had a game, or haven't allowed you to play as that character. That always upsets me greatly. um Especially since, like, I swear, like, 25 years ago, or however long, like, um Shigeru says, like, oh, we can create any game we want. Well, why don't you? Yeah, like, why do you keep on doing the confines of what you feel safest about? I feel like, I'm sorry, I don't mean to slightly go off Nintendo, but or against Sega for that matter, because um Sega and Nintendo, I'm not sorry, I'm not trying to be racist here, because but or I'm Japanese, but I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be racist against my own kind. But I feel like Nintendo and Sega are very similar. It's, same thing with Toyota and Honda, and and even citing a Western example, Disney and um, uh, Disney and DreamWorks. They both have good products. Why not, or even another Western example is DC and Marvel. It's like they both make good products, or good characters. Why not enjoy them both? Why do you have to? Why do most people all the time is like, why pit them against each other? It doesn't make sense. Um, sorry, going back to Metal Gear Survive, and I'm sorry, I know I left that thought bubble hanging for Sega Nintendo, but again, like, well, sorry, I'll go back to the Sega Nintendo thing before I go back to Metal Gear Survive. Sega died while trying to take a lot of risks, and Nintendo is. I feel like if Nintendo took a risk every now and then, it sure. I mean, I don't think they would have died as much as Sega, but they still have more, I think, crazier games to show that oh, we take risks every now and then, and instead of playing it safe all the time. So even though if you somebody contradicts me and say, oh, they never played it safe, right? They sent their they had consistent third parties all the time. Like Rare did or Rare worked for Donkey Kong, but again, that's still a safe bet, because Rare had tons of computer games that they worked on beforehand, and again, they they already showed their prowess when they made Donkey Kong 1, so that was not a risk, that was a sure bet. And gosh, what else I was gonna say? So sorry. That's what I was gonna wrap up about my Nintendo versus Sega comparison. And other than that, and going back to Metal Gear Survive, creative characters fantastic, cooperative multiplayer fantastic. I think it was kind of nuts to have that story out there because again the story is kind of it's out there, but it's also kind of in league with Metal Gear standards of nanomachines and I don't know, Metal Gears and ghosts and all that ridiculous stuff. So um, I think it was also in a sense too. It was I almost feel like it was slightly breaking with kind of um almost like Japanese societal norms too, because it does feature um a black guy. I think his name is Goodman in the story, and he's a central character, and he doesn't die, which is great. I think, or I don't think he dies. But he for like Metal Gear Solid 2, which had Peter Stillman, but he dies, and also I don't there's a gosh, I can't think of the guy in Metal Gear Solid 3 that's part of your codec conversations. I think his name is Cipher, or not. I may be wrong, not Cipher, but he's your equipment manager, and I don't think he dies either. But it's refreshing to see another black character in Japanese gaming that is not stereotypical and actually, um, you know, he's very prominently featured in the story. He is if I remember correctly too, uh he's very central to the story as well. So um so I think stories again like little uh not again not super great, but again still good for what they were handed, good for what they tried to do. I know it's like again it's like heavy-handed people will be like, oh, if Kojima was there or whatever, but again he's still even look, I think at the warning signs that still at Metal Gear Solid 2 that he wanted to get out as much as possible because he wanted to make new and different games. And regardless of whether people like it or not, um, him leaving Five was probably what he wanted so much because again I mean makes a very similar game. Same thing with Destiny. When Destiny will be a future podcast, don't you worry. Um, he makes a very similar game called Death Stranding, and even though it doesn't feature like a stealth protagonist or whatever, it's still like it still is very it looks very similar to Metal Gear, or at least the modern iteration of Metal Gear. So so yeah, it's this unfortunately for not trying to be macabre or macabre, or I can't think of how you say that word right now. Or morbid. I think Kojima always wanted to not work on Metal Gear as much as he did, because again like he pre Metal Gear I think he made Snatcher, which was itself close to was almost like a uh gosh, it was like a video game version of Blade Runner and several other like anime slash movies. And then he made Metal Gear in 1987, or he and and team members made Metal Gear, and then Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake or whatever, and then both for the Japanese computer. I think it was called the ZX Spectrum, and then he made Police Knots, which was again another point and click kind of very um like out there like game, and then they made Metal Gear Solid, and then so yes, and then in more modern Metal Gears, he also he and his team also went on to work on Zone of the Enders and Zone of the Enders 2, and so again, he um regardless of what you say, if it was a crime that he left, he still wanted to make his own games, not be um not singled out, but be tied to forever like Metal Gear. Like same thing with like George Lucas wanted to make more original movies before he was tied to forever Star Wars. Because again, you see that in American Graffiti and THX 1138, and in Star Wars you see that all the time because he loves to call that shit out. Um, but then he hit Star Wars fame, and then he tried to with the prequels 1, 2, and 3, and the Tuskegee Airmen movie, Red Tails. He tried to make original movies again, but it didn't take, and this story after that. So again, so Kojima wanted to leave. This is what Konami made after the fact. It's probably again what a lot of people say, cheap cashing on the franchise, and then you gotta look more to that. In that, I almost forgot to say this is probably my final thing that I'm wanting to say about the game. The most, or one of the most, besides the three other things I mentioned, one of the other most fantastic things about the game is that you could get all kinds of other tracks from Konami games. From some of the online tournaments or whatever, you could exchange your points for cassettes to be played at the base. And unfortunately, that's kind of where it ends. You can only hear it from the base. You can't hear it from the cassette player / Walkman that in previous installments in Peace Walker and whatnot. But anyway, you have cassettes to play at the base, and not just Metal Gear music, but there's so much Konami classics in there. Like there's Contra, there's Castlevania, there's like old ass ancient games like ER Kung Fu, one of the first fighting games that Konami made, and swept to the waste bin of history. There's I think the series called Winning 11, which I never heard of before I started playing Metal Gear Survive, and I think it's was probably, I think, only a Japan only soccer game. They have gosh, what's it called? They have again a great selection of other Metal Gear favorites like Snake Eater, and I think I know the song that the pop music is gone from Peace Walker, but there's a lot of other Peace Walker singles. There's again, Sins of the Father, a great song from Phantom Pain. There's so much music in there that I can't like. I swear the only other franchise that's not represented musically for the cassette tapes, I swear, is Frogger, and that's all I can think about. Because oh yeah, and from Castlevania as well. Either I think it's Rondo of Blood, Divine Bloodlines. That is a great song. So I think from what I remember, if anything, it's a great jukebox to just like sit to like just listen to. It has so many songs in one place. So yeah, it's a like, I know it's like so many forces they want to make it worse, but I think it had a lot of positive aspects to kind of stand out as a unique title, because Japan does this so many times where it's like they'll make a unique handheld title like Peace Walker was, and then sometimes they'll port it every now and then like Peace Walker was to the Metal Gear Solid HD collection, which had, at least for the Xbox 360, it had Metal Gear Solid 2, Guns of the Patriots, Metal Gear Solid 3, Snake Eater, and Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker. So playing Peace Walker on the Xbox 360, was probably one of the like best co-op experience you could ever have, and destroying the destroying tanks, or capturing tanks or helicopters, or the other APCs, and fighting the Metal Gears, one of the best co-op experience, I can guarantee you that. um and they kind of tried that with Metal Gear Survive, and with some of the monsters, they were almost akin to Monster Hunter things. I swear you, or I kid you not, there was like a squid like creature and a dinosaur like creature that look really goofy if you when you look at them again. But yeah, this type of game is this thing we never see. It's a Japan only, like, handheld only title for the most part, and that kind of thing. There's like, I mentioned it. I forgot to mention it 2 or 3 days ago when I recorded the podcast for Os Tatake Owendon, and then its sequel, Elite Beat Agents, that was released to the United States, and I think their sequel, Owendon 2, never, again, was another Japan only type thing. Um, but yeah. So yeah, this was a very, and I think it probably sold poorly with other up to a Western audience, because again, they a lot of Western audiences don't know what to expect from this. They don't know what to decide, what and I think it's such a trend, for modern audiences to be like, okay, everything was bad from that. Like, same thing I like to say with you know um uh Star Wars Episode 9. Everything was not bad from that. There were some good aspects. So you gotta remember the good aspects to go coincide with the bad. That's gotta be your takeaway. So anyway, I think if they had more time with it, Metal Gear Survive, it um might have been a better game. I know it's like, this is probably sacrilegious and blasphemous and all that, and I don't really care for that company, but Metal Gear Survive might have been might have been like a Cyberpunk 2077. It's been pushed back to November, but that's great, because again, they can have more time to focus on it and polish it and make it the better game that it is. Because again, if you release it early, then that's something that if you didn't have any if you heard a lot about it, then it kind of taints it. Same thing with Star Wars Battlefront 2, is that it was a catastrophic launch, and then that's all the stories that everybody hears about it, and then it's only like 2 3 years later where it's like, oh, it's actually good, and then people were like, oh yeah. So I think that's all we can talk about Metal Gear Survive. You gotta find the good aspects of a bad thing. Like, gosh, like, I don't know. I, I mean, I already mentioned 4 things I really like about the game, and I think they improve it tenfold. But yeah, yeah. I think a good thing to say is thank you for tuning in, Shin, and thank you if you're here, Shrimpy. Um, Other than that, I think a good way to end it today is with a positive affirmation. And gosh, talked about having a favorite meal. I think if you're part of the isolated and introverted people, I think a good thing is to try and go outside. You know, not just for required things like a health appointment or something like that, but try and go outside just to go outside. Um, it's a great idea, to lift your mood, and um, not be depressed, because gosh, um, sunlight helps you out and lifts your mood. And but have like a sunscreen and all that, because again, I don't want my advice to go outside and then unfortunately you get like skin cancer or something like that. So just and I'm not sorry, I'm not trying to scare you. I'm just trying to help out, because again, going outside is great. You get some slight exercise from walking outside. The sunlight hits your skin, and that gives you vital and valuable chemicals, and to help out with your body. So that's my affirmation to today, and thank you for tuning in. And this is Reroll Zero signing off.